and then everybody's invited to the front lawns for the final debate, which is about whether capitalism has lost its way. So, as per usual, please all phones off in respect to our panelists. If you do need to have a conversation, take it outside. And if you could also, you're welcome to take photographs, but no flash photography, please. And if you could just take any rubbish with you when you do leave, or if you're going to stick around with us, that would be great. All right, without further ado, I'd love to introduce our panelists for the Mahanagar writing the Megalopolis. I didn't do that very well, apologies. It's presented by the Rajasthan Patrika series, and I'd like to welcome to the stage our esteemed panelists. We have moderating today Anosh Irani. We also have joining us Musharraf Ali Farooqi. We have Tania James, Ajay Navaria, and then Jeet Thayil. So would you please make them feel very welcome?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Mahanagar, writing in Megalopolis. I'm Anosh Irani, and I have the pleasure of introducing this wonderful group of writers today. We'll be doing about 7 or 8 minutes reading from each writer's work, and then hopefully we'll have time for questions from the audience. Cities give birth to stories. You discover a city gradually, because great cities have many layers to them. It's not just the external landscape of a place, that is, its geographic location, its climate, its people, its restaurants and stadiums, or its gambling dens and brothels. A city has an internal landscape as well. The politics, crime, corruption, religious beliefs, languages and dialects crashing into each other. And the authors that will read from their work today have captured the rhythm and chaos of a city, unpeeled its many layers through language, story and character, the way explorers would, as though they are not writing about urban spaces, but planets. They have allowed themselves to fall into the abyss of the unknown, and who knows what triggered that search to begin with. It could be a painful past, a haunting memory, or a singular image. But they have come out of these cities with some truth that both displaces us and energizes us, as that is the function of great literature and storytelling. In a way, they are secret guides who provoke, challenge, and inspire us. The Persian poet Hafiz once wrote, "Like a great starving beast, my body is quivering, fixed on the scent of light." He might as well have been talking about a novelist's quest for the truth. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Ajay Navaria is the author of 2 collections of short stories, Patkatha or Anya Kahaniya, and Yes Sir, and a novel, Udhar Ke Log. He has been associated with the premier Hindi literary journal Hans. Navaria teaches in the Hindi department at Jamia Millia Islamia University in Delhi. Unclaimed Terrain, a collection of his stories translated into English, will be published by Navayana in January 2013. Navaria stories have also been translated into Japanese. Please welcome Ajay Navaria.
Hello friends. I will take 1 minute to say something about Metropolitan. Friends, I love Metropolitan, metros, cities. I should say I worship because I hate the present structure of villages. I will not be wrong if I say we should set a fire to this present structure of villages. These villages, I think, and I should say, is not good for our future generation, for our youth. These are injecting rituals which are not good for the future society in our minds, in our youth generation, in our youth, young generation. They are making them casteist, racist, and cruel. They don't think out of their caste, out of their religion. Metros destroy it, stop it. It forms class society. And villages stop class society. So that's why I said I hate the present structure of Indian villages. My stories will give you this, and I will read in Hindi, and my friend Julie, some of my story, some experts, she will read in English. So this is my story named Godna. In English you can say tattoo. I will start because my character enjoy unanonymity in cities. In villages, social pressures are so much, then you cannot enjoy your personal space there. गोदना, उफ, वाकई ये कितने पुराने हैं और बदरंग भी। जिम में प्रवेश और संभलने के कुछ ही क्षण बाद यही पहला विचार था, बारिश की किसी तेज बौछार जैसा, या फिर उस स्थिति की तरह जिसमें कोई व्यक्ति किसी बंद दरवाजे के सामने खड़ा हो और दरवाजा खुलते ही अचानक भीतर से कोई बाहर निकल बिना देखे बाल्टी भर पानी डाल दे। मुझ पर इस तरह अचानक बौछार करने वाला या बाल्टी भर पानी डालकर भिगो देने वाला आखिर यह कौन था जो इस तरह प्रकट हुआ एकदम अचानक? अपने इस पुराने और बदरंग जूतों की तरफ देखते ही मेरा ध्यान अपने हाथ पर गुदे नमो बुद्धाय जय भीम पर गया। यह गोदना मेरे दाएं हाथ में कलाई से थोड़ा ऊपर और कोहनी से कुछ नीचे के मांसल हिस्से पर गुदा था। बहुत पहले पिताजी ने यह गोदना अपने और मेरे हाथ पर छठ के मेले में गुदवाया था। हम अपने गांव गए थे जो बिहार के गया जिले में आता है। तब मैं सिर्फ 10 साल का था और दिल्ली के उसी सरकारी प्राथमिक विद्यालय की 5वीं कक्षा में पढ़ता था जिसमें पिताजी चौकीदार की सरकारी नौकरी में थे। तब ठेकेदारी प्रथा का प्रचलन नहीं हुआ जैसा आजकल है। हैरानी की बात यह है कि ऐसी जगहों पर जाने के वक्त मेरा ध्यान इस गोदने पर अचानक जाता था जैसे आज इन जूतों पर गया। खान मार्केट से बस 100 कदम की दूरी पर था यह जिम, भव्य जिम। जिस तरह यह मार्केट शानदार है, अर्ध चंद्राकार सी यह मार्केट शाम होते ही पूरे चांद की तरह दिप दिप दमकने लगती है। इस मार्केट के एक छोर पर सुजान सिंह पार्क है और जो पत्रकार और लेखक खुशवंत सिंह के पूर्वजों की मिल्कियत है। जिसने भी खान मार्केट देखा है, आई थिंक ही कैन रिकॉग्नाइज। दूसरे छोर पर विभिन्न सरकारी दफ्तरों से घिचपिचाता 11 मंजिला लोकनायक भवन है। तीसरे छोर पर अंग्रेजों के जमाने की याद दिलाता एम्बेसडर होटल है और अंतिम छोर पर पृथ्वीराज मार्केट है। इसमें अधिकतर कारों के रिपेयर से जुड़ी दुकानें हैं या अन्य छोटी मोटी जरूरतों की चीजों से भरी दुकानें खान मार्केट के वैभव के सामने किसी जर्जर पीले पत्ते की तरह कांपती कांतिहीन पृथ्वीराज मार्केट। जिम एन इसी पृथ्वीराज मार्केट के अंत में था, एक छोटे से सर्विस रोड के साथ जुड़ा हुआ। वहीं से शुरू होती है सरकारी अधिकारियों और वीआईपी बंगलों की कतार। यह नई दिल्ली नगर पालिका का क्षेत्र है, इसे साफ सुथरा रखना आपकी भी जिम्मेदारी है। इसी से आशय मिलती जुलती इबारत का एक बोर्ड मैंने बाहर गेट के पास स्कूटर खड़ा करते हुए देखा था। गेट पर 20 कार खड़ी थी। इनमें से 2-4 गाड़ियों में ड्राइवर भी थे जो बाहर खड़े आपस में बातें करने में मशगूल थे। इनमें से कुछ काले, कुछ गेहुए और एक आध गोरे रंग के भी थे। और इन कारों में एकॉर्ड, होंडा सिटी, शेवरले और स्विफ्ट थी। सबसे सस्ती हुंडई की सेंट्रो थी। मारुति 800 आश्चर्यजनक रूप से एक भी नहीं थी, जिसे शहर में मजाक में बाबू की गाड़ी कहा जाने लगा है। पिछले 5 सालों में बाबू गाड़ी अर्थात दीनहीन गाड़ी अब हाशिए पर जा चुकी है, जैसे इंसान जा चुका है। ड्राइवरों के रंग रूप और गाड़ियों के ब्रांड की यह बात दूसरा विचार था जो मेरे मन में किसी चोर दरवाजे से दाखिल हुआ। यह विचार पहले जैसा प्रबल और झकझोर देने वाला नहीं था, क्योंकि यह जिम के गेट से बाहर की बात थी। वहां हम सब एक थे, एक बराबर। ना मुझे उनकी कार से कोई मतलब था, ना उन्हें मेरे स्कूटर से। यह अपरिचय का अपार मीठा समंदर था, जिसमें कभी मेरी आंखों में नमक लगने का खतरा नहीं था। यह महानगर की मनोनुकूल मोहिनी मिठास थी, विष्णु के मोहिनी रूप ही की तरह मादक और मारक भी। मारक, मन कुछ पल के लिए ठिठक गया। हाँ, निसंदेह मारक भी। हम क्या करें आखिर? मन डरते हुए धीरे धीरे संभलने लगा। अपने मन को इसीलिए चिढ़ाते हुए मैं अमीबा कहता हूं। क्षत विक्षत होने पर भी यह दोबारा एक नया आकार ले लेता है, या कभी कभी तारीफ करते हुए मैं उसे रक्त बीज भी कह देता हूं, तब तो यह बेसब्रा फूला नहीं समाता। मन अपने लिए अमीबा शब्द पसंद नहीं करता, और रक्त बीज, उफ, उसके लिए तो जान छिड़कता है, क्योंकि उसमें उसे अमीबा के नए आकार की जगह रक्त बीज का नया अवतार कहा जाता है। इसी से वह फूला फूला डोलता है देर तक। मैं मुस्कुरा गया अचानक। धन्यवाद। मैंने इसीलिए उस पर थोड़ा जोर दिया, आई एम्फेसिस ऑन दैट। अपरिचय का मीठा समंदर। उन समाजों के लिए अपरिचय कितना महत्वपूर्ण है जिनको इस कास्ट सिस्टम में अभी तक इज्जत नहीं मिली है। उनकी डिग्निटी को जब मौका मिला, जब तोड़ दिया जाता है। उनके लिए अपरिचय महानगर कितनी फैसिलिटी देता है, ये उसको रेखांकित करता है।
I will be reading from a different story titled Subcontinent in English, and in Hindi Upmahadvi. The darkness deepens as the night dies and the day begins to break. Then a single red ray emerges in the vast blue sky. The wolves run, and as they run, they turn into sheep. Here's the village, our roots, our land, where there is indignity, abuse, helplessness, and weakness. Every moment, the fear of dishonor. Every second, the feeling of being small. There is sand everywhere, squeezed dry of all moisture. There's no police station for us, no hospital, and no court. There's the village panchayat, but it's not ours. In the panchayat, there's no justice for us, no hearing, only taunts. The village, we have no fields. In the village, we have no fields. The land was not ours, only the labor. The harvest was theirs, the fields were theirs, the houses were theirs, the earth was theirs. We had just a hut. We had only salt, chili, and bread to fill half a stomach, and water to fill the other half. But there was no well. We had no new clothes. We had no shoes. Here in the city, I'm an executive in a big government enterprise, an officer, Mr. Siddharth Nirmal, marketing manager. My wife works as a college lecturer. We have a house. My wife and I have a room. Our daughter has a separate one. There is a sitting room for guests and a study. When our daughter was sick, I called Dr. Panja Brahmin to come to our house. He prescribed a good, expensive medicine, and she got better right away. She didn't die of the cold the way my aunt did. We have a car with an air conditioner and a middle-aged Garwali Brahmin driver, Bhatt, who would never forget to bow and greet us when he opens the door. He has never neglected to rush and take my briefcase as I step out of the lift. Our daughter goes to an expensive convent school. Her teacher said once at a parent-teacher meeting, "Your daughter may be a good singer, sir." And I called a Bengali music teacher whose name and number I found on the internet. He comes home twice a week to teach our daughter music. When our daughter insists, there's McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and also Haldiram's, where we can even fling our money when we pay. We know that even if the money falls, the smiling counter boy sitting by the computer will be the one saying, "Sorry, sir," in English. We wouldn't even have to express regret. People only offer us smiles in our presence. No one would dare laugh at us. Here there is a police. Here there's an expensive lawyer. In this urban world of utter anonymity, there's happiness all around, unending, eternal. This anonymity forever colors our rainbow dreams. But here in the familiar world, there are the same snakes, the same whispers, the same poison-laden smiles. Our quota is fixed. I got promoted only because of the quota, that's it. Otherwise maybe I'm still dirty, still low-born, like Kishan, the office janitor, like Kardam, the clerk, because I'm their caste. His colleagues won't eat food from Kardam's house. He told me this. I couldn't eat with them. Pashwan and Kardam ate together, but nobody knew when Kishan ate. Kardam filed a written complaint with General Manager Mahapatra about his fellow clerk Gupta. Gupta had called him the quota guy. I even tried to pursue the case. Mahapatra Sahib then called me into his cabin. He discussed the case with me for half an hour. I explained to him how Gupta debased the office atmosphere. Mr. Siddharth, you're an officer. You shouldn't be prejudiced. It is because Kardam is also scheduled caste that you... Mahapatra Sahib narrowed his eyes. And it's not as if Gupta used any caste-specific abuse. Kardam has indeed come here through the quota. You know this too. So why does it hurt him? You may go. I'll take care of it. I saw the same smile on his face that I had seen so often on Gupta's. His decision has been pending for the last 5 years. Why do Kardam and Paswan come to see me so often? Why do they tell me their troubles? Why am I the only such officer there? Why does my assistant Paswan not hesitate to dispose of my teacup in the absence of my peon, Chetty Kardik? Why don't Gupta and a few others greet me when I come to office? Why does everyone rush to do every bit of work for my deputy Tapialal? Is it because of his Brahmin surname? Why? Why are we different? Are we separate from them, like Muslims, like Christians, like blacks, like those from outside their known turf? Are we aliens, lecha, lowly, untouchable? I was writhing like one of those hundreds of strands of twine Amma's hands used to twist into a rope. But how clear the stars looked in that village sky, so many, hanging so low, climbing on top of each other, jostling with each other, leaving no space for each other. Dadaji's saintly words sparkled between those stars. To this day, his sweat sparkles on the harvest's golden sheaf of corn, in the wells and in the ponds. The fragrance of his hands lingers on the mud walls of that thatched hut. So much is ours, our earth, our land. Again, I came near the broken steps of the stepwell. I started to pluck a water lily in bloom at the edge. In the starry night, a lily brimming with moonshine.
Thank you.
Can I read one
Yeah,
more?
just a
little.
very quick
Okay.
excerpt.
This is about a person, an officer and his peon. And peon is from high caste and officer is from lower caste. So-called low caste and so-called high caste. That officer asked, Narottam is the officer. तुमने देखा है कभी आरओ सिस्टम तिवारी? हमारे यहाँ कई सालों से है. उस दिन नरोत्तम ने कहा तो तिवारी सुलग गया. उसके अहंकार से, अच्छा बता तिवारी, आरओ का क्या मतलब होता है? नरोत्तम ने फाइल पर लिखना बंद कर दिया और गाढ़ी नजर से उसकी आंखों में झांका. तिवारी को लगा कि इन निगाहों में वह कीड़ा मकोड़ा बन गया है. आरओ मतलब एक तरह का एक्वागार्ड सर. तिवारी ने सतर्क होकर जवाब दिया, वह दिखा देना चाहता था कि वह कोई मिट्टी का माधव नहीं है. बस तुम लोगों में यही कमी है, गधे घोड़े सब बराबर. नरोत्तम झल्ला पड़ा. टूथपेस्ट खरीदने जाओगे तो कहोगे कोलगेट खरीदने जा रहा हूं, डिटर्जेंट खरीदोगे तो कहोगे सर्फ खरीद रहा हूं. अरे बेवकूफ, एक्वागार्ड तो कंपनी का नाम है. इसे वाटर प्योरीफायर कहते हैं, पानी साफ करने वाली मशीन. और आरओ सिस्टम दो अलग अलग चीजें हैं. टीवी पर नहीं देखते, इसे ड्रीम गर्ल हेमा मालिनी अपनी दोनों बेटियों के साथ बेचने आती है। यह कहते हुए नरोत्तम अपनी आदत के विपरीत कुछ मुस्कुरा गया। यूं वह कभी मुस्कुराता नहीं था। मुस्कुरा तो तिवारी भी गया, पर उसकी छाती में नरोत्तम का कहा गया बेवकूफ शब्द शूल की तरह गड़ गया। राम नारायण तिवारी ने अपनी जिंदगी की शुरुआत 18 साल पहले अपने गांव में बिताए थे। उसके पिता पंडित शिव नारायण तिवारी भी की कभी आसपास के 10 गांवों में जजमानी थी। वह अब भी गांव से जुड़ाव खत्म नहीं कर पाया था। उसका बड़ा बेटा तो वहीं हुआ। वह अपनी पत्नी को प्रसव के लिए, जापे के लिए शहर से गांव ले गया था। वह जब भी गांव जाता तो भूल ही जाता कि वह भारत सरकार के एक सार्वजनिक उपक्रम में चपरासी है। गांव के बस अड्डे पर उतरते ही उसका सत्कार शुरू हो जाता। गांव तो वहां से लगभग 1 किलोमीटर दूर था, पर तेज धूप में यह दूरी बहुत मीठी लगती है। हर 10 कदम पर कोई आदमी या औरत रामा श्यामा करता या पैर छू लेता। गांव में आज तक उसने बताया भी नहीं था कि वह दिल्ली में चपरासी के पद पर है। इसकी 3 वजह वह अपनी आत्मा को समझाता। 1, इससे लोगों को क्या लेना देना कि वह शहर में क्या कर रहा है। दूसरे, 10 गांवों में प्रसिद्ध सत्यनारायण और मानस के कथावाचक स्वर्गीय पंडित शिवनारायण की प्रतिष्ठा को दाग लगाने का उसे कोई अधिकार नहीं। और तीसरे यह है कि उसे कोई हक नहीं कि वह गांव के लोगों के इस भोले विश्वास को तोड़े कि उनके गांव का आदरणीय ब्राह्मण देवता शहर में अपने अफसरों के झूठे बर्तन धो रहा है। यह जानकर ही उन लोगों को पाप लगेगा। इसलिए वह खुद को बाबू ही बताता और गांव के कुछ लोग उसे बाबूजी पुकारने भी लगे थे। पंडित जी पाए लागू से ज्यादा बाबूजी पाए लागू तिवारी की आत्मा को सुकून देता। गांव के भीमा वाल्मीकि से जब उसने कंधे पर हाथ रखकर हालचाल पूछा, तब से उसका गांव में कद और बढ़ गया और वह कहता उदारता से, कौन छोटा कौन बड़ा, सब इंसान है, एक नूर से सब जग उपजा। आरओ यानी रिवर्स ऑस्मोसिस सिस्टम नरोत्तम ने कहा तो तिवारी का मुंह खुल गया, आंखें सिकुड़ गई और माथे पर सलवटें आ गई। किसी शिष्य की अपने गुरु के सामने जो हालत हो जाती है, वही हालत तिवारी की हो गई। अच्छा छोड़, तू कॉफी डाल और जा, नरोत्तम समझ गया।
Thank you. Our next speaker is Musharraf Ali Farooqi. His novel Between Clay and Dust was longlisted for the 2012 Man Asian Lit Prize and the DSC Prize. His novel The Story of a Widow was shortlisted for the 2010 DSC Prize and longlisted for the Impact Dublin Literary Award.
Thank you, Anosh. This novel starts with the event of the partition, and it's not based in any particular city of the subcontinent. It could be any city. It could be Delhi, it could be Lahore. And my Indian friends who have read it have said that this could be Azamgarh, this could be Delhi, and friends from Pakistan, they say, no, this is Lahore, of course, this is Lahore. So, and that was the intention of this whole exercise, to create an impression of a city which looks very familiar, and the lives that are lived within it are also familiar to us. But there are no geographical or nation-state coordinates as such. This novel is about a courtesan, a tawaif, and a pahalwan, a wrestler, and they are at the end of their illustrious careers, and they are suddenly faced with this event which has robbed them of their main patronage, because both institutions, both of the tawaif and the pahalwan, were largely dependent on the largesse of the princely states. And after the partition, those princely states were gone, and their funds were gone. So they had to fend for themselves, and suddenly they had to make very difficult choices and come to terms with the reality which was completely alien to them, and for which they had not made any provisions in their minds or in their lives. So I'll just read you a brief. The first chapter, which is quite short, so and then I'll just maybe say a few words about it. The chapter is titled Inner City. The ruination of the inner city was attributed to time's proclivity for change. It lay abandoned, half buried in and half surrounded by the squalor of shanty towns. New settlements, cordoning it on 3 sides, seemed to avoid the shadow of its sunken grandeur. Streets connecting new colonies skirted off its peripheries. Links binding old and new neighborhoods were either never formed or broken at the start. The wide serpentine alley of high, arched gateways dividing its residential and artisan quarters looked strangely desolate. The ravaging winds of partition had left it unscathed. The turmoil that had seared the fiber of men and gored their souls had not touched this quiet habitation. There had been anxiety that things would be greatly changed, but later there seemed hope that the worst was over and life's routine could now be renewed. Nobody expected that in partition's wake would follow a slow disintegration of values that would unravel the inner city. In a way, the inner city was always a cat's cradle, a crisscross of life's many faces, each sustained by the other. The strings of this cat's cradle had not snapped, but they had become hopelessly tangled. The inner city had been emptied of most of its old inhabitants, just as its walls had been stripped of their turquoise-colored mosaic panels. Time's ravages had forced into oblivion its generations of the dead, too. To answer the fierce demand for construction material during the last few years, the memory of those who had shaped the inner city was not only stripped of the tombstones that commemorated their existence, but also the bricks that marked their graves. The disfigured architecture and worn paved stones of the inner city still intoned its past splendor in broken whispers. There were a few enclaves where the last of its remnants were yet visible. Unconcerned and out of step with the currents of time, even after the recent changeful decade, these enclaves and those who inhabited them had continued to exist by exercising some power to resist change, or perhaps because no one found it worthwhile to remove them. They had been left on their own and forgotten, and it occurred to some that the mist of oblivion would hang over them forever. And after the partition, there was a big migration of people on both sides of the border. And I've spoken to people who have lived in Lahore and who have lived in Delhi, and they were faced with this huge influx. And sometimes this influx of people who came into their lives or in their living spaces, and I mean by that the cities, were of the same faith, but also there were times when they were not of the same faith. So even when they were of the same faith, there was this feeling of otherness. This, like, I was in West Berlin right after the Berlin Wall had come down, and I traveled to East Berlin, I was in West Berlin, and I could immediately see from a face of a person that this person lived in East Berlin because they were somehow less well-nourished, and they looked slightly different, which the Germans themselves could not see, but another person coming from outside could see that otherness in their faces. So this sense, it's not defined who lives around the inner city or what new constructions have come up and who is living there, but this sense of otherness is there. And these new people who have come, they are more practical, maybe they're more focused on their lives and trying to come to terms with the chaos that has brought them there. And those who are living in the inner city, they are settled there for generations and they're not planning to move. So this novel is a bit about the change of how that change comes to the inner city and what compromises are made in the process. Trying to figure out this city took me some time. I tried to read the history, and I tried to read about architecture of different places, the old cities, because I thought, I could not create, the people who were living there, but if I could create the architecture, maybe there'd be some semblance of life in its alleys and its streets, and maybe that would, give some kind of a platform to the story to move on. That's
Thank you, Musharraf. Thanks. Tania James is the author of the novel Atlas of Unknowns, which was a finalist for the DSC Prize in South Asian Literature, and Aerograms, a collection of stories. Her essays and stories have appeared in Granta, Boston Review, the Kenyan Review, and the New York Times. Please welcome Tania.
Thank you. Can you hear me in the back? Sounds like it. I'm trying to appear very calm here, but I feel extremely excited and giddy because I've never read fiction about Pehlwan wrestlers before, and I'm also going to read about Pehlwan wrestlers, and hopefully later we can share some exciting facts about wrestlers together. But I actually am going to read a story and Imam, and I'm sure you, Musharraf, have heard of them, but I'm just curious if anybody has heard of these two. Yeah, it's a startlingly small number. I mean, not that I'd never heard of him either until I'd kind of right when I was writing this story, but he actually was a wrestler who was a national champion Pehlwan wrestler, and he was probably on the level of maybe Kapil Dev at the time. He was sort of a superheroic figure, and he went to London in 1910 in order to compete on an international stage and win the World Championship, he and his brother. And I'd never been to London. I've been there, but when I wrote this story, I'd only been there on an 8-hour layover. I really had no idea what London was like, and but as I was writing the story, it kind of occurred to me that my unawareness of London sort of lined up with their unawareness of London, so it kind of worked in my favor. But it also occurred to me, I moved from Louisville, Kentucky to New York City, and I think a lot of times people come to a city in order to feel empowered and in order to kind of achieve something. And but oftentimes I think a city can make one feel quite vulnerable. And I thought this is an interesting combination of a man who's so visually powerful and intimidating and sort of superhero, made vulnerable by a city he just really can't quite wrap his mind around. So I'm going to read from the opening of the story, which is called Lion and Panther in London. It opens with a wrestling poster, a wrestling announcement that was the actual announcement they used at the time. The sensation of the wrestling world, exclusive engagement of India's catch-as-catch-can champions, genuine challengers of the universe, all corners, any nationality, no one barred. Gama, champion undefeated wrestler of India, winner of over 200 legitimate matches. Imam, his brother, champion of Lahore. These wrestlers are both British subjects. Gama, the Lion of the Punjab, will attempt to throw any 3 men without restriction as to weight in 30 minutes, any night during this engagement, and competitors are asked to present themselves either publicly or through the management, no one barred, all champions cordially invited, the bigger, the better. Gama the Great is bored. Imam translates the newspaper notice as best he can while his brother slumps in the wingback chair. Their tour manager, Mr. Benjamin, lured them here from Lahore, promising furious bouts under calcium lights, their names in every newspaper that matters. But the very champions who used to thump their chests and flex their backs for photos are now staying indoors as if they have ironing to do. Not a word from Benjamin Doc Roller or Strangler Lewis, not from the Swede John Lem or the whole fleet of Japanese fresh from Tokyo. Every year in London, a world champion is crowned anew, one white man after the next, none of whom have wrestled a Pehlwan. They know nothing of handsome Hassan or Kallu or the giant Kikkar Singh, who once uprooted an acacia tree bare-handed just because it was disrupting the view from his window. Gama has defeated them all and more, but how is he to be champion of the world if this half of the world is in hiding? Mr. Benjamin went to great trouble to arrange the trip. He cozied up to the Mishra family and got the Bengali millionaires to finance the cause, printed up press releases, and rented them a small, gray-shingled house removed from the thick of the city, with space enough out back to carry on their training. Other adjustments are not so easy. Gama keeps tumbling out of bed 4 hours late, his mustache squashed on one side. Imam climbs upon the toilet bowl each morning, his feet on the rim, and engages in a bout with his bowels. Afterward, he inspects the results. If they are coiled like a snake ready to strike, his guru used to say, all is in good shape. There are no snakes in London. These days, when Mr. Benjamin stops by, he has little more to offer them than an elaborate salam and any issues of sporting life and health and strength in which they have been mentioned, however briefly. He is baby-faced and bald, normally jovial, but Imam senses something remote about him, withheld, as though the face he gives them is only one of many. Left to themselves, Gama and Imam continue to hibernate in the melancholy house. They run 3 kilometers up and down the road, occasionally coughing in the fume and grumble of a motor car. They wrestle. They do hundreds of betuks and duns, lost in the calm that comes of repetition. And at the end of the day, they rest, they bathe, they smooth their skin with dry mustard, which conjures homeward thoughts of plains ablaze with yellow blooms. Sometimes, reluctantly, they play another game of chess. On the 8th morning, Mr. Benjamin pays a visit. For the first time in their acquaintance, he looks agitated and fidgets with his hat. His handshake is damp. He follows the wrestlers into the sitting room, carrying with him the stink of a recently smoked cigar. The cook brings milky yogurt and ghee for the wrestlers, tea for Mr. Benjamin. They were warned about English food, mushy potatoes, dense pies, gloomy puddings, the sort of fare that would render them leaden in body and mind. When Mr. Benjamin has run out of small talk, he empties a sober sigh into his cup. Right, well, I suppose you're wondering about the tour. Yes, quite, Imam says, unsure of his words but too anxious to care. It seems a bad sign when Mr. Benjamin sets his cup and saucer aside. Wrestling in England, Mr. Benjamin explains, has become something of a business. Wrestlers are paid to take a fall once in a while, to pounce and pound and growl on cue, unbeknownst to the audience, which nevertheless seems to enjoy the drama. After the match, the wrestlers and their managers split the money. And you know of this now only? Imam asks. No. Well, not entirely. Mr. Benjamin pulls on a finger, absently cracks his knuckle. I thought I could bring you fellows and turn things around, show everyone what the sport bloody well should be. Imam glances at Gama, who is leaning forward, gazing at Mr. Benjamin's miserable face with empathy. There would be challengers, Mr. Benjamin shrugs, if only you would agree to take a fall here and there. After receiving these words from Imam, Gama pulls back, as if bitten. Fall how? Gama says. On purpose, Imam explains quietly. Gama's mouth becomes small and solemn. Imam tells Mr. Benjamin that they will have to decline the offer. But you came all this way, Mr. Benjamin gives a flaccid laugh. Why go back with empty pockets? For emphasis, Mr. Benjamin pulls his own lint-ridden pockets inside out and nods at Gama with the sort of encouragement one might show a thick-headed child. Gama asks Imam why Mr. Benjamin is exposing the lining of his pants. The lunget we wear, it does not have pockets, Imam tells Mr. Benjamin, hoping the man might appreciate the poetry of his refusal. Mr. Benjamin blinks at him and explains, in even slower English, what he means by empty pockets. So this is London, Imam thinks, nodding at Mr. Benjamin, a city where athletes are actors, where the ring is a stage.
Thank you, Tania. Jeet Thayil is a poet, novelist, librettist, and musician. His 4 poetry collections include These Errors Are Correct in English, and he is the editor of the Blood Axe Book of Contemporary Indian Poets. His debut novel, Narcopolis, was shortlisted for the 2012 Man Booker Prize, and Jeet was recently awarded the DSC Prize for South Asian Literature. Please welcome Jeet Thayil.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to read a brief passage, but just to set it, it's set in Bombay in 1992 during the Hindu-Muslim riots that changed the city forever. And the reference to chemical is with a capital C. It's a type of heroin that had arrived in Bombay at that time, and the conceit in this passage is that it arrived coincidentally at the same time that the city was unraveling. I think that's enough of an explanation. And considering what happened earlier today, there is a word in this passage that begins with the same alphabet that begins France and rhymes with potluck, which I shall not use because I wouldn't want to offend anybody, you know. So I'll do a beep when I get to that word. Thank you. The Khana was back in business the next day. Late in the afternoon, she put on a dress and went to Salim's to buy chemical. Bits of rubble and the shell of a burned taxi lay strewn on the street. She noticed there were no dogs to be seen, not a single one. Where had they gone? There were no cattle or birds either. Salim told her he was out of cocaine and to give Rashid his apologies and to tell him that Garad was available and would continue to be available. Chemical, in particular, was available in plenty. Why was that, she asked him. Where did it come from that it wasn't affected by what was going on in the city? Salim smiled at her with sudden affection. It had been a long time since he had had sex with anyone, he thought, much less a woman, and a Hijra woman at that. Salim could barely remember what an erection felt like, but at that moment he felt affection for Dimple and he would have liked to beep her. A friendly or nostalgic or tender beep. Sit down, he said, and I'll explain it to you. Garad comes from Pakistan. Garad. You know what it means in Urdu? Waste. This is the unrefined shit they throw away when they make good quality mal for junkies in rich countries. Even the worst junkie in America, Shamerica, wouldn't touch Garad. That's why the Pakis send it here. We buy it happily and ask for more. And to give it a special kick, we add more shit to it and call it chemical. Now you might say this is some kind of special ingenuity, a skill to take bad shit and make it worse, but I'll tell you what it is. We're Khatarnak sister beepers, all of us on Shuklaji Street. We deserve to die. We're only happy when our heads are touching the floor and we're praying to the God of Garad. We deserve to die. Dimple told him to speak for himself. I don't want to die, she said. Not today. I've got things to do. Tell me why chemical is freely available when there are no tomatoes in the market. Because, Dimpy dear, the city belongs to the politicians and the crooks, and some of the politicians are more crooked than the most crooked of the crooks. Garad sales are protected. It doesn't matter that it comes from Pakistan. They'll make speeches about Muslimans and burn our homes and shops, but this is a multi-crore business, and in Bombay, money is the only religion. They're not stupid. Now you tell me something. What are you doing here? Dimple nodded. The world is ending, she said. Anything can happen to anyone at any time.
Thank you, Jeet. That was wonderful. It was interesting for me when I was reading Jeet's novel because I was telling him earlier that I grew up on Belasses Road in Bombay, which is bang opposite Kamatipura and Shuklaji Street, the areas that he wrote about. And what was unusual is that I was reading this novel in Canada. And suddenly I got transported back to the Bombay of the 70s and the Bombay of my childhood in a way. But bit of nostalgia, but also very, very realistic and surreal, which was a fantastic read.
Listen, I know you're moderating, but you were not originally the moderator. I hope you're going to read a little bit from your novel.
I'll do a brief excerpt. I'll just tell you about my book. It's called The Cripple and His Talismans, and it's the story of a man who wakes up in hospital one day without his left arm. He doesn't know how he's lost it, and so he goes looking for it in Bombay, and he meets a whole range of people who give him hints and clues that eventually lead him to a man who sells arms and legs for a living. So it's a very cheerful little story. The excerpt that I'm going to read is the prologue. I don't need to set it up. In the beginning, there was a little boy. He was alone in the universe, and everything was dark and quiet. One day he saw a tree very far away. Then it vanished, and everything was dark again. Being simple and humble by nature, the boy became scared and wished for strength. In his heart, he felt warm. The warmth spread all over his being. What did my vision mean? The boy asked. He waited for an answer, but none came. I must make the place of the tree like its many limbs, he decided. Let them branch out to become the roads of the world, and let none of them ever be cut off. He made the place and its tree out of the distance and waited for a long time. He observed this place during his wait and was not happy with what he saw. So he flew to it. There he saw another forked form that he had created. It was like a walking tree, and he called it man. Man was bent over, entangled in his own embrace. You use your limbs wrongly, said the boy. They are meant to embrace others, not yourself. The boy freed man of his own clasp. Now use your limbs well, he said. The boy saw another form and named it woman. He realized that there were many forms gathered there. He named them all: tiger, snake, smoke, tree, fire, soil, water, and wind. The boy flew above them all because he could. This is the place of the tree with its many limbs, he told the forms. You must use them well and let none of them be cut off. All the forms were confused. These limbs branch out to become the roads of the world, the boy explained. But smoke was still unclear. In life there are three main paths, the boy said again. The first one is crooked. It means you are simply pretending to come towards me. Only the sly and the devious shall take this path. Hearing this, snake slithered away, dragging soil with it. Tree needed soil to live, so it followed. Next is the straight path. It leads only to me. It is very long and few will complete it. There's nothing to do along the way except pray. In truth, the road that led to the boy was the most wondrous of all roads, but the boy had no wish to present it as such. This was a test, but none of the forms took that road. The third path has the possibility of flying, of tigers, of flying tigers, said the boy. It means anything can happen. It was woman who first walked on the third path. She needed things to make her happy, so she took tiger to ride on, fire to keep warm, water to wash her hair, and wind to blow through it. Smoke followed because fire went. The boy was upset with these choices. By not taking the straight path, the forms had cut off a limb. Only man was left, so the boy turned to him. Go away, said man, motioning the boy away with a flick of the wrists. And once again man was entangled in his own embrace. The boy told him, I can see what's going to happen here. There will be magic, poverty, thievery, music, pollution, dancing, murder, lust, and very little prayer. Just leave me alone, said man, and promise me that you will never come here again. First tell me what this place is called, said the boy, so I remember never to visit it, for it is no longer the place of the tree. Bombay, said man, there is no other like it. Thank God, said the boy. It was then that the boy realized who he truly was and kept his promise never to return. Thank you. I'd now like to open it up to the audience for questions. We have very limited time, so please keep your questions brief.
Gentleman here.
हेलो मेरा सवाल अजय नावरिया जी से है। आपने अपने रीडिंग के अंदर इंडियन क्रूअल कास्ट सिस्टम के बारे में बताया, बहुत ही साधुवाद है। शहरों के अंदर आज दिन तक जो साहित्य हो रहा है वो सोशल वैल्यूज है नहीं, रामायण महाभारत या और कुछ अलग अलग मुद्दों पे हैं। तो आज के टाइम में हम वही पढ़ते आ रहे हैं आज दिन तक। शहरों में दलित लेखन बहुत प्रभावी तरीके से सामने आ रहा है, वो अंधविश्वास पाखंड के खिलाफ, जात पात के खिलाफ आ रहा है। तो दलित लेखनों को जो स्थापित लेखक है वो किस तरह से स्वीकार कर रहे हैं और क्या चुनौतियों का सामना करना पड़ रहा है?
थैंक यू फॉर आस्किंग क्वेश्चन। मैं यहाँ पर आपको सिर्फ इतना कह सकता हूँ, देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन विलेजेस एंड मेट्रोपॉलिटन। अबाउट द वायलेंस which occurred in villages, there is no direct violence in metropolitan. You can enjoy your personal space. If you don't want to talk anybody, you should. You can. It. But in villages, you can't do it. Social pressure is too much there. It mounted upon you. You are bound to do as village want or decide. But in metros, if you see, for youth, for Dalits, for women, for marginalized voices, metropolitan is boon for them. But in villages, you can't avail this kind of freedom or equality. You can see this. दूसरी बात जो आपने दलित विमर्श को, दलित साहित्य को लेकर कही, दलित साहित्य उन्हीं चीजों को सामने ला रहा है जो अब तक साहित्य में छूट गई थी। और दलित साहित्य का उद्देश्य एक धर्म आधारित राज्य बनाने का नहीं है, धर्मनिरपेक्ष राज्य बनाने का है, जाति निरपेक्ष राज्य बनाने का है, सेकुलर स्टेट। अगर वह भी, दलित लिटरेचर भी कास्ट से प्रभावित है, जातिवाद से प्रभावित है, तो उसका पर्पस ही डिफीट हो गया। उसकी पूरी कोशिश, अगर मैं डॉक्टर अंबेडकर के शब्दों में कहूं, इफ आई से एनिहिलेशन ऑफ कास्ट, जाति को मजबूत नहीं करना है, जातियों के बीच के भेदभाव को खत्म करना है। दिस इज द पर्पस ऑफ दलित लिटरेचर। आई थिंक दिस इज माय आंसर।
Thank you.
I think if you run for elections on that platform, you might get a few votes. If you run for elections with that speech, you might get a few votes.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, this question is about form, and it's primarily for Jeet, but others please comment. I'm wondering what your experience was in moving from poetry to the novel, which is such a completely different form, how you conceptualize story and characters, and what that experience was like.
I had no idea what it would entail when I got into it, because I'd done 4 books of poetry at that point and had never written fiction seriously. I'd written short fiction, but never a novel. And now when I think about it, I think writing a poem, it happens in a burst. Even if you do 50 drafts of it over many months or even a year, the writing of it happens very quickly, and it's a joyful process. The novel is the exact opposite of joy, you know. It's just work, it's drudgery, it's a 9-to-5 job, and if I were to talk about it like a simile, I would say the poet is like the sprinter, the ecstasy of the sprinter, and the novelist is the long drudgery of the long distance runner. You know.
Tania and Musharraf, would you like to?
I get an occasional high from marathoning, I guess. I mean, I've never written poetry, but I think there are occasional moments of maybe that poetic kind of glow you get. But yeah, I agree with you that most of the time it's just dehydration and drudgery.
Yeah. Well, there's a short story called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, and I think that really describes a novelist.
A writer.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have a young girl just here.
Hello, my question is for Mr. Ajay Navaria. Do you really think that metro cities are different from villages, as Jaipur is soon going to be a metro city? But I don't feel like we don't have casteism here. As myself, my mom teach me only caste in the morning, in the night, only caste, nothing else. And I am here in the Jaipur Literature Festival, but my mom never want me to be a writer, never.
I hope you will not teach your children this caste. In future it will reflect, it will come, future will come. It irritating you because you are a metropolitan generation. If you were in village, you born in a village, you don't think like this as you are thinking now. That's why I am telling you. This is the difference between metropolitan and villages. And Jaipur is a metropolitan, but yet wait for new form of Jaipur in your generation. Because I think one thing, again I am repeating it, and Jeet will say again political speech, no? Try to snatch your personal space, your liberty. Then you will enjoy this metro city. Yeah, yes, you want to speak something, Anand?
But you know what? Like I have been studying in a school which runs from charity, and my cousins have studied in school. They are so famous in Jaipur, but they accept everything what their parents say. It's the only me in family who always, say, okay, I'm not gonna do this because I don't believe in this. Okay, but I don't really feel my like college students, my like schoolmates or college mates, anyone go against of anything that's happening here.
But I
set
think
a fire of joint families. Set a fire. Because joint families are injecting all this bloody rubbish.
हेलो
next
Gentleman
question. Yeah.
to your left.
मेरा सवाल नावरिया जी से है कि
Just hold the microphone up to your...
गांव की जड़ों से उखड़कर महानगर में अस्तित्व व व्यक्तित्व के संघर्ष की अनुभूति व संवेदना जटिल स्तरों पर संपूर्णता से वर्तमान साहित्य में प्रतिध्वनित हुई है, नहीं तो क्यों नहीं?
हम ऐसा नहीं कह सकते कि प्रतिध्वनित नहीं हुई है। अगर आपको याद हो तो मैला आंचल और राग दरबारी हमारे सामने है। वर्तमान साहित्य में भी आप संजीव की कहानी पढ़ सकते हैं, आप शिवमूर्ति की कहानियां पढ़ सकते हैं, आपको बहुत सारे लेखकों की कहानियां मिलेंगी जो गांवों से संबंधित है। मगर मैं ये कहता हूं, ये गांवों के लिए नॉस्टैल्जिया है क्यों? ये क्या दे रहे हैं? और मैं कह रहा हूं अभी तो कुछ भी नहीं दे रहे हैं, और अभी जो कुछ भी दे रहे हैं वह सब गंदगी है। और शहर की तुलना में मैं लाख बार कहूंगा इस बात को कि शहरों को या तो इन गांवों को इन शहरों में बदल दो, या इन गांवों में जो इनका जो वर्तमान स्वरूप है इनमें आग लगा दो। और ये मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूं कि अगर आप अपनी आगे वाली जनरेशन्स को बचाना चाहते हैं, जैसे ये हमारी दोस्त ने कहा, तो इनके फ्यूचर को अगर आप बचाना चाहते हैं कि ये इनके अंदर एक अवेयरनेस साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी, तो आप इन गांवों को क्यों पकड़ कर बैठे हैं? आप देखिए इस कंट्राडिक्शन को कि एक वो जो गांव है, ये नॉस्टैल्जिक जितने लोग हैं, ये कौन लोग हैं? ये वही हैं जो मर्दों की तरह सोचते हैं, ना औरतों के पक्ष में ना उन जातियों के पक्ष में जो वहां उनकी गुलाम बनकर रहती हैं और यहां जरा सा सर उठा लेती हैं तो इनको बुरा लगता है, इसलिए वो मेट्रोस को पसंद नहीं करते।
I have a question actually for Tania and Musharraf. When we're writing about the city, sometimes when we come back, let's say we've been away from a city, do you find parts of it disappearing? And how do you deal with that in terms of, the reason I'm saying this is when I come back from Canada to Bombay, certain parts of the city almost disappear and have become ghosts. How does that influence your writing? Does it feature in?
Well, the one mega city that I have a real experience with is New York City. And I think it's often said about New York that everyone thinks they're from New York, but really no one's from New York because no one is born in New York that lives in New York anymore. And so you kind of feel this maybe mistaken sense of ownership of a city when you're living there, when you live in New York. And I think whenever I go away, and I live in Washington, D.C. now, I'm always sort of pining for New York, and I always kind of think I have an idea of what it still is, and then I go back and I'm reminded of how I never really owned it in the first place because it's always changing, and that's the nature probably of most megacities, that kind of constant transformation. So you get, I'm sort of knocked down a couple pegs whenever I go back, but which I think is it's a good position to be in as a writer, because you never want, if you're trying to represent a place, you never want to feel, at least I never want to feel completely settled in it. If I feel like I completely understand the place, I kind of lose that mystery, that sense of mystery that drives the writing in a good way. So I guess, I don't know how you feel, Michelle.
I really don't care about the physical spaces or the geographical spaces. I emigrated to Canada in '94, and then I returned for a longer period in 2009. And what had happened to the city, the city had the Karachi where which I'd left. It really did not matter to me. Yes, there are more bridges, more overhead, maybe, all these physical constructions, but it's really what happens to our relationships which we leave behind. that change and how we relate to those changes. And I always, you meet your friends and sometimes you feel that, there's been a change in them, or maybe there's a change in you, and that's reflected in how you interact with your friends. But, and I always feel that, the true measure of a friendship is, that it remains constant regardless of, whatever changes, or no matter how much time has passed, because, there's always that connection that lies within you. And so I really don't care about the physicals. They can go to hell.
I'm so sorry.
जी भगवान का शुक्र है मैंने नहीं बिताया. मैं इसलिए कैसा आई एम थैंकफुल टू द गॉड. जब मैं गया तब मेरा ऐसा खराब अनुभव रहा कि मैं इस कंक्लूजन पर पहुंच गया. और ये जरूरी नहीं है कि जो what I feel, what I experience is the experience. I write yours experience and others experience too in my stories. हाँ, वो पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस भी मैं लिखता हूँ, बता रहा हूँ मैं आपको.
Well, I think this debate can continue, but unfortunately we've run out of time.
We have run out of time. I do hope that all of our authors will go over to the authors' signing desk and discuss this further, because I know there were a lot of people that didn't get to ask their questions. I'm deeply sorry about that, but we do have to get on with our final session for the day. Please, a massive round of applause for our wonderful panelists and that brilliant discussion. Thank you so much.
And thank you to the audience.
Dear friend, last line I want to say for you: metropolitans are oxygen for our modern India.
Please take your comments over to the author's signing desk and they'll be happy to talk further. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. We're going to be starting